It's not about your beliefs. It's not about your own personal crap. You have to be able to set aside what you need to set aside, because at the end of the day, the child and saving him from mutilation is what's most important.
From your perspective, how is the Intactivist movement doing overall right now?
This is coming from someone who's not really active in the Intactivist community, but when I'm engaging with other parents and other mothers, you see the influence that they've had over the past few years and how much change they were able to accomplish with what they've been doing. Because, like I said, I don't really surround myself around a lot of interactivists or a lot of progressive mothers. So to hear these women be like, oh, go check out your whole baby, or use the right words like intact and not uncircumcised, or use the right words of like mutilation and not circumcision, I think they're making a lot of leeway in society. Yeah, it is.
Do you believe the movement has actually helped prevent circumcisions? And if so, how can we tell?
Once again, I have to go to socializing and with other mothers and other parents, and them being able to call out that mutilating your son is not normal, and this is something that we have to start talking about. And this is ordinary mothers. These are not mothers that are part of any activist group. These are not any mothers who have someone in their life that's an interactivist that's speaking out. And half of these mothers are not even people who've had interactions with interactivists on social media. This has just been the education that they have been putting out there. So it's changed a lot of people's mindset and society's mindset. Honestly, I believe that it's been a positive change with the work that they've been doing and stuff. Yeah.
Where do you see the biggest weaknesses or blind spots in the movement?
I wish that the interactivist community could be just a little bit more organized when it comes down to outreach in the community. There's so many organizations out there. You have Your Whole Baby, you have Cockfight, you have the Bloodstained Man, and probably a few others out there that I don't know about. But I think if you had a more organized approach, because, there's so many people. There's Christians who bring up the topics. There are people of different ethnicities that bring up the topic, and they're educating the public. You have to kind of say the right things to be able to reach that person. And so I think if you are capable of being able to understand that and approach it the way that it needs to be approached, it helps. Because, there's moms out there who could be possibly open to hearing this information, but then if you have 50 people coming on your posts being aggressive and posting a bunch of memes and stuff, it's intimidating, and it makes it seem like the idea of not cutting your son is absurd because of of how the information is being delivered to you. I feel like there has to be enough organization between organizations that, like Brett, he does a good job. He targets young people, college students, and he tried to come to it as a more relatable thing, and that can help. Just as, Your Whole Baby, they're into gentle education, and they're able to educate the mother and the fathers and give information while also being able to not be so aggressive about the information that actually helps. And then there's sometimes that are people who need the Bloodstained Man to come in who are a little bit more forthcoming and more aggressive. I think being able to identify which organization, or which tactic I should say, would be more helpful, because sometimes you do more harm than good when you're using the wrong technique when you're doing community outreach.
So do you think there should be certain demographics that are reached?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm not to be biased or bring race in, but the Black community especially. And this is a problem amongst all races. This is not a black or white, Asian or, Indian or whatever problem. It's a humanity problem, or it's a problem amongst boys and men, no matter what race you are. But obviously you have to acknowledge that there's cultural differences. And so, I always joke to myself, like, if I were to become an interactivist, I would do hood interactivism. You have Cockfight, who goes to the college games and they target the young people, and that's unique. I would go into the hood because, look, let's be honest, you got like 50, 60 white people coming on your page telling you that what you're doing is wrong. And this is not my mindset. I'm not saying that, but a lot of what I witnessed, they're like, who are these white people? Like, what are you talking about? Like, because sadly there are a lot of people who look at race. And so to have another Black mother that's like, or, someone that can relate culturally and just be like, no, it's not cool. But you get a bunch of older white people coming on your page telling Keisha that she shouldn't cut her son, she's not gonna look at the problem for what it truly is. She's gonna make it about it being something else, that it separates her and her situation because of race or culture. So honestly, yeah, there's a lot of demographics out there that the interactivist community hasn't touched yet. And it's not just the Black community. I'm pretty sure there's some Jewish interactivists out there, but if we can grow up those numbers, I think that would do really good.
So what would hood interactivism look like to you?
I think it's, it would be something that's a little bit more. I think we need people out in the streets. I think we need more people of color. Point. Just, it's period. Like, there needs to be more Black interactivism within the community outreach. It just has to happen. There's some, and it's not just about race. It's about culture. It's about culture. And to hear somebody that has the same culture as them, grew up in the same, churches as them, they don't have to look at it as a white problem or hippie problem, and that they can be able to see it. Because, sometimes, yeah, people are ignorant, but sometimes it takes that right person to come along that speaks their language. It's more about culture and how you can be able to know the right things to say and the right way to really communicate with them.
Why do you think some parents still justify circumcision even when they've been exposed to the facts?
Defense mechanism. Like, look, obviously, I think it's almost part of human nature when you kind of come to the realization that you did something wrong. It's obviously you want to build up a wall. You want to believe. Especially when you're talking about your child, someone that you love so deeply. It's literally your job to protect them. And to come to the realization that you did something so horribly wrong, I think it's a defense mechanism where you immediately want to shut down. And sadly, society and doctors and nurses and friends and parents and grandparents, they're always in your ear telling you that no, circumcision is not wrong. It's wrong for you to even do something like circumcision. So for you to hear the total opposite, and for you to have to come to the realization that you did, in fact, make the wrong decision, and that you did harm your child, and this is something that you can't reverse, I think parents immediately want to shut down and they want to protect themselves. And I think it's something that they do sometimes, that they can't even help it. And that's what's sad, because, as a parent, you're going to make mistakes and you're not going to always make the right decision. But the least you can do is confront what you've done and take accountability and be able to acknowledge that. Accountability is sometimes really hard for parents, especially in general. You know, you always confront your mother about what she's done wrong. Like, I was such a bad mother, wasn't I? Or, you know, it's just, I think it's hard sometimes to take accountability and stuff. Yeah.
Hey guys, it's me, Pods. I'm briefly interrupting this interview to let you know about the Pods e-commerce program. It is vital to keeping the Prevail Over the System channel alive. Go and join us on our Discord to learn more. And best of all, it's free to partake in the Pods e-commerce program, and we don't need any of your information whatsoever. This helps us keep the interviews coming along with other Intactivist content to empower, teach, and update Intactivist with very important information, as well as being the voice for the Intactivist public. Thank you all so much. Okay, now back to the interview.
In what ways do you think Intactivism could be doing much better?
Being able to acknowledge the right approach to the situation or the person that you're trying to educate. You know, there's sometimes women on there that's like, I'm going to circumcise my son because this is what's part of the Bible. And then you have Intactivist people saying stuff like, oh, you're sky daddy. That does more harm than good. You know, so being able to acknowledge when you can do more good than harm, I think that's more admirable, and it is something that needs to be done. Because there are Christian Intactivist people out there. I'm a Christian myself, and Christianity doesn't call for you to circumcise your sons. Like, that's what Jesus came for. That's what he's...
Which is probably the same way a Jewish person talking about wanting to circumcise their son, a bunch of Christians coming in there telling them that Jesus abolished it, isn't going to really do any good.
You have to be able to sit back and make a very smart decision on how you're going to approach the situation. It can't just be 100 people with different ways coming to this one person, you know, because you're talking about a topic that is almost taboo. If you're not, I mean, it's so normal to circumcise your kid and your son, but for you to be so against it is so taboo in American culture. So the way you approach people and how you approach the situation, you have to sit back and choose the right method. And I think it's a little disorganized when people are like, oh, here's a post, everybody jump on it, and then everybody has their own tactic and way of doing it, and it can become very chaotic, and it can do more harm than good. Yeah.
And if there was one person that could have spoke their language per se,
exactly,
and they're drowned out by all the other ones that said a bunch of disparaging things.
Absolutely.
It starts attacking the person's character as opposed to the intent of what they want to do, which is what they really should be attacking.
Yeah, like, that's why I think it's important to have so many representations of so many communities, whether it's the Black community, the Jewish community, the Mexican community. I know they're not very, you know, prone to cutting culture, but it's so important to have almost every demographic represented within the Intactivist community. So you can be able to reach these people and be able to speak the language that they speak and be able to give them insight on something, and so it's not so foreign to them. I think it's important, and I think that's where they kind of lack the disorganization.
Right. So if there's a certain type of tactic that people could start taking, what would it be?
It's not about your beliefs. It's not about your own personal crap. You have to be able to set aside what you need to set aside, because at the end of the day, the child and saving him from mutilation is what's most important. So if you are an atheist and you're speaking to someone Christian, be gentle, be kind, educate them, educate yourself on the Bible and what it says, so you can be able to combat them and be able to kind of reach out to them and get them to understand, or whatever it is. Yeah. Honestly, I feel like being aggressive doesn't work.
Right.
It doesn't work.
What's something important you've learned about being a more effective advocate?
Personally, when it comes down to my approach, I almost have to act as a salesperson. I almost have to be able to read this person's vibe, be able to understand them a little bit, and be able to speak their language. I keep saying that over and over again, but it's it's the famous saying. It's not what you say sometimes, it's how you say it. And so being able to know the right approach when I'm talking to a mother or a father, a friend, a sister, I'm very aware on how I should approach the situation. Because, like I said, it's very important for you to be able to kind of deliver the message on, the best way that person will be able to accept it. And I think I've learned how to do that because I've had bad situations and good situations. I've had conversation with mothers who are very defensive and very angry, very ignorant. And now that I know what I know now, I'm like, okay, if I would have approached her this way, maybe she would have been a little bit more acceptant of the information that I'm giving her. So I think I've learned how to be able to choose the approach on how I'm deciding to educate the people that I'm talking to. Yeah. Right. I think it's easy to get angry because I know what I know now. I'm like, how is this not common sense? It's disgusting. It's infuriating. Ironically, like I said, I was one of these mothers not that long ago, so you think I would have a little bit of grace, but it can become really frustrating talking to these people. It's like, you ever want to just shake somebody like so hard and be like, why don't you just understand?
How can we help parents feel confident enough to push back against pressure from doctors or nurses?
Educate yourself. Like, that's the thing is, it's like doctors and nurses, they hold degrees and they hold a sense of authority, and so sometimes they can be a little bit condescending or talk down to you. But if you are educated and you stand firm on protecting your child, then everything will be okay. I remember with my son, when he was born, we've got asked how many times? Like
8 times.
8? Really?
I was the one dealing with it mostly.
Yeah. I knew it was a few times. I didn't think it was that much. Yeah, like, they're aggressive. They are aggressive.
They wouldn't take no for an answer.
No, they won't. And they will make you believe that you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know the information that they know and that they know better than you. But if you educate yourself and you stand firm.
For parents who regret circumcising, what would you say to help them find healing or make it right?
We all make mistakes as parents. I've said it so many times and I'll say it again. I wholeheartedly believe that most parents out there want to make the right decisions. And there's no perfect guidebook to parenting. I mean, there's probably thousands and thousands of parenting books out there. Whether if you're going through your pregnancy or whether you're raising a boy or raising a girl, and there's so much advice out there. And because you were honestly born in a cutting culture, it's not that surprising that you would make a decision like that. You can't go back in time and change your decision, but taking accountability and being able to acknowledge the wrong decision that you've made and being able to apologize and acknowledge the trauma and the pain that you have posed on your child by making this decision goes a very long way. Because, when men find out what they were done to them and they acknowledge the mutilation and they acknowledge the abuse that they endured, there's no turning back. But what does help is having a parent acknowledge that. And that's part of the healing process, is having that person that made that decision for you be able to acknowledge what they have done and go out there and don't keep quiet. Don't make that wrongful decision and not educate other parents. I feel like you almost have a duty to share your testimony and save other children. I mean, that's the least you could do besides seeking accountability.
Okay, that was Zharia part 2. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. She doesn't have any links to share down in the description. I will have my links down there though. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss part 3 of this interview and our other Intactivist content that we release every single week. Please share and like this video to get this out to more people. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Bye!